former ambassador of Turkey to Jordan, and all of the distinguished participants of the webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to express my gratitude to the organizers of this important webinar on cross-boundary water management. Water is and will remain one of the main significant substances on the earth. All plants and animals must have water to survive. Climate change, increasing population, unplanned urbanization, and inept planning have negative pressure on the quality and the quantity of the water resources. This is why water management and water policy are now more important for all the countries than ever, and why it is one of a central goal of the Sustainable Development Agenda. The world is getting urbanized. In the year 2050, 2/3 of the world population will be living in the urban areas, and it's projected that a great portion of this population will be in megacities of more than 10 million inhabitants and even more. The big question facing city governments at the moment is how to house these numbers and give them employment, education, basic needs, and make them productive members of the future economy. As the city grows in numbers, area, and needs to basics, it becomes more evident to ask some basic questions. Can the world resources sustain the size of the development, and by what means? İzmir Institute of Technology is currently the only institute of technology in Turkey. İSTEK is a state research university founded in 1992 with the aim of significantly contributing to society through advanced research and higher education in scientific and technological fields. Water resources is among the priorities of our university. Therefore, recently we established the International Water Resources Department and it works at international level. Also, one of the main objectives of the International Water Resources Master Program is to address these matters by training skilled specialists and scientists who can develop, use, and manage surface and groundwater resources required by the ecosystem. Water, energy, and agriculture production will be the main focal points of interest for the region's countries and their trade partners worldwide. This webinar will investigate the role of water resources management from a cross-border perspective. So, if you let me, I would like to continue with a small seminar. I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So as a geneticist, throughout my career, I always believed in the science diplomacy. There are a lot of ways to connect the countries, to connect the cultures, nations, colors, and the religions as well. But the science is the best way to connect and to communicate the countries and the regions. In the current area, we have a lot of problems, the global crisis that we have to face, and no country or no discipline can solve these problems by itself. So we need to collaborate, and the best way is the scientific collaboration. So why science is important in this matter? Because the science is apolitical and it addresses the issues of great importance to all societies. It's based on a method, and of course it gives us access to the world's best minds. So that's why we need to trust in science diplomacy, and we need to work hard on this. And I know CSAMI as a best example of the science diplomacy for the scientific collaborations between the countries. And CSAMI is located and established in Jordan, and there are a lot of countries contributed for the establishment of the CSAMI Research Center in Jordan, and it provides access and service to many scientists from around the world. So by organizing this event, we would like to have more and more science diplomacy, and of course we would like to have more and more connections, communications with the Jordan universities and scientists with our university as well. My science diplomacy journey started in 2010 in Turkey. Then after being involved in many international organizations and scientific academies, in 2016, I was elected to science diplomacy course organized by the World Academy of Sciences. Then over there, my scientific collaboration with Jordan started with meeting with the Princess, Her Royal Highness Princess Sümeyye bint Al Hassan. And then I was invited to World Science Forum, organized and hosted in Jordan, in Dead Sea in 2017. And then I gave a talk on the science diplomacy, the best way to connect the world throughout the science, and how we can build the scientific partnership. During my visit to Jordan and giving this talk, then of course we met again with Her Royal Highness Princess Sümeyye in this meeting. And then I was invited to give a talk in Jordan University of Science and Technology. And I know that Jordan University of Science and Technology is ranked number in top 600 universities in the world. And I know it is the best technical university of the Jordan. So after giving my seminar, my conference, then I met with the VIPs of the universities and we started a collaboration between my university and the Jordan University of Science and Technology. And in 2014, I was invited to a meeting in Sudan, and this meeting was organized by UNESCO, ISESCO, and the main goal was how we can transform the Islamic countries with the science and technology. And over there, I met also with a Jordan professor, Rana Dajani, and our collaboration and our friendship started in 2014 in Sudan. Then I invited Professor Dr. Rana Dajani to Turkey to give a talk in our international conferences. And I was happy to see that Professor Dr. Rana Dajani was elected as the rising star of the science leader in Jordan in 2017 during this World Science Forum. And still we have close collaboration and communication with Professor Rana Dajani. Here you can see just next to me. And during our meeting, of course, our meeting in Jordan, this World Science Forum, there was really an inspiring talk and by His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan, and I was really impressed very much with Her Royal Highness talk during this opening session of the World Science Forum in 2017. And this picture was taken by my own camera. Then after listening His Royal Highness, then we come together with our friends. Here you can see Professor Dr. Alaaddin Al-Halili. He was also a dean in a Jordanese university. Then he invited us to Amman. Then all together with my friends from Jordan, then we have been to Amman, and this is a very nice Jordanese dinner with our friends. Then this friendship turned into a collaboration between my university, Izmir Institute of Technology, and current rector of the Jordan University, Professor Dr. Alaaddin Al-Halili. Then we signed an MOU, and then we started a collaboration between Izmir Institute of Technology and Jordan University based in Amman. But then, surprisingly, after listening this very inspiring talk, and before leaving the hotel to Amman, then I was just going out to meet with my friends. Then I came across with His Royal Highness at the exit door of the hotel. Then we started to talk with His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan. Then we met over there, and that was really a very good surprise for myself to meet with this amazing speaker, His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan. But of course, we also enjoyed the Petra, the desert, and amazing horses of the Jordan, Arabic horses over there. So what I believe is that the science diplomacy is the best way to start a collaboration between the countries and the cultures. And we will be more than happy to collaborate more with the Jordan universities, to have more graduate students from Jordan to our university. And I hope these meetings, as I know the participants and the main speaker, the main speaker of our meeting is His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan, and I know that Her Royal Highness Princess Sumaya is here with us as well. And I hope this meeting start new construction of the new bridges between Izmir Institute of Technology and the Jordan universities, and I hope we can go further with this collaboration. So I would like to thanks again for all the participants, and I would like to again welcome all the participants and thanks His Royal Highness for accepting to give his talk in our meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yusuf Baran. Actually, I myself, I was in the German Jordanian University. It's one of our good universities in Jordan. And it's surprisingly, I know now that you have been to all these good places in Jordan. And on behalf of the university community, I welcome you again, even after this seminar and the end of this pandemic, inshallah. We will have many collaborations and many good memories to share.
Inshallah.
Now, I would like to invite His Royal Highness Crown Prince Prince Al Hassan. The Prince is well known all over the world for being one of the activists in the fields of economy and collaboration between nations, and he is a godfather of many of the things which are taking place in Jordan in terms of science and technology and economic development. And we are pleased to have him today with us in this meeting because he also gave us a very thoughtful meeting in the seminar which we had in 2018 in Amman on water policies for the Middle East. Please allow me to introduce His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan to give a speech on this event, and we would be listening with honor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jalloka, dear moderator. I would like also to recognize the guests I suggested that this distinguished colloquy invites. I hope they have been able to join us. They include Professor, former President of Slovenia, Danilo Turk. Are you with us, sir?
Daniel, maybe not yet.
CD will join in 40 minutes.
Very well. Well, they also include Professor François Munger from Geneva, from the Geneva Water Hub. Possibly not yet.
Yes, I am here.
Ah, very
yeah, nice.
And Natasha is with you, I hope.
Yes, Your Royal Highness. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much for joining us. And I want to say also to Sandeep Paslekar, we would not be here were it not for you. Are you with us, Dr. Sandeep Paslekar from the Search, the Mumbai-based organization?
Maybe not yet.
Blue Peace. Well, I would like to just remind you that in 2011, we all of us, or many of us, met You mentioned Sesame, many of the nationalities participating in Sesame in Montreux in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, we addressed the subject of inter-regional cooperation. Now, we start this conversation today by talking about cross-boundary management in the Middle East. But I would like to point very clearly to the fact that the regions that we speak about include the Black Sea, include the Eastern Mediterranean, include the Gulf, and include the Eastern African littoral. And I would say that they include these regions largely because of pipelines. And you may ask, what are these pipelines? And you would not be surprised to discover that they are oil and gas pipelines. Either Khatlar, which I understand are those pipelines that originate in Turkey, or Besmeleler, which are transit pipelines. I hope you will correct my Turkish. I hope I haven't got it wrong. I would just like to add that for us hydro-insecure people, in terms of the three regions, the region of the Black Sea and beyond to the Caspian, the region of the Eastern Mediterranean, which of course we have tried so hard diplomatically to link to the Black Sea, and of course the region of the Levant, and by extension of the Great African Rift Valley, which of course extends from Ethiopia and Tanzania all the way to the Taurus Mountains and Anatolia. We have a situation where the central artery of our region, the central trunk of our region, which is largely a region which regards water and water management as a priority for a regional framework, we actually are in the process of creating infrastructure which does not necessarily benefit the vulnerable and the marginalized. I chair, I'm the honorary chair of a new council for refugees and displaced persons, and we're talking about 81 million displaced persons in the world today. In fact, the whole issue of protection of internally displaced persons is a growing issue because it doesn't fit into a category apart from, of course, the general principles of the United Nations. And I would like to say that the time has come for us to establish a knowledge-based approach in terms of both Geneva and Istanbul, if I may, taking into consideration this intriguing term that I have discovered, and you probably are well aware of it, which is the Commission on Social Determinants, two dots of health, social determinants of societal priorities, social determinants of education, and so forth. Basically, our basic investment in stability is our investment in human dignity. So how can we improve the conditions of daily life, the circumstances in which people are born, grown, live, work, and age in this situation that we find ourselves today, where the climate change challenges are outweighing any form of consideration that we may have to be able to develop a carrying capacity, because our thinking is not transboundary as yet in terms of the themes that we need to promote. The commitment to peace in the Middle East necessitates a focus on regional development concepts, and yet, of course, we are focusing at this time in this region on priorities, particularly with COVID, that should have unified us in developing a social determinants of health and health inequities, which include shortages of water, the quality of water, the quality of air, the quality of soil, and of course, how to tackle the inequitable distribution of power and resources, including water and agriculture, which, as you know from the AUB, is now an excess of water, agriculture, and nutrition. They are doing fantastic work. I don't know if we managed to get Dr. Mukhtar to join us today, but we will keep him in the picture. The structural drivers of the conditions of daily life, not for us in this webinar, but for the millions of people who are suffering at the present time, because they are the important people, globally, nationally, and locally, have not been measured in terms of identifying the problem, evaluating actions needed, and expanding the knowledge base based on developing I won't say a workforce or humans as a tool of economic development, because this sounds exploitative, but we have not yet trained our workforce, empowered our workforce, enabled our workforce, entrusted our workforce in the understanding of the basic social determinants of health. We have not yet raised public awareness about the social determinants of health. Yes, we have built magnificent dams, and of course the example of the Ethiopian dam is an issue that is worrisome for many of us. But I want to point out that the 2017 Arab Climate Change Assessment Report found that all projects show that temperatures will rise over the Arab region during this century. At mid-century, its moderate aggregated climate change projection shows an increase of 1.2 Celsius to 1.9, while its more severe projection shows an increase of 1.7 to 2.6. In parts of the region, particularly the Gulf, life-threatening heat waves already plague several countries each summer. I received from Foreign Minister Çavuş a book from the Ottoman archive showing the building of the Hejaz railway at the turn of the century. The challenge in terms of climate must have been impossibly debilitating. But from those early beginnings in infrastructure, if we ask ourselves over the 100 years, what have the nationalities that have emerged in what used to be the old millet system in common in terms of facing transboundary issues? Left unattended, these challenges, and I refer in particular to climate change, water, the rise in temperature, will grow in regularity and intensity. And one paper in 2015, I believe, stated that combinations of high temperatures and humidity will make parts of the Gulf near uninhabitable by 2100. So I want to ask all of us who are looking with keen interest at the way in which countries are jumping over the Levant to deal with the Gulf, whether in fact an intra-independence is not required. I'm not talking about interdependence, because I don't want crumbs from your table and you don't want crumbs from my table. But intra-independence means recognizing your identity and working to complement what you have achieved in terms of regional commons. And among those regional commons is clearly the cluster of water, energy, and nutrition. Increasing water scarcity, exacerbated by climate change, poses an especially stark challenge in what we chose for this seminar to call the Middle East. But I think we're talking about three Middle Easts, at least: the Caspian, the Black Sea, the Eastern Mediterranean, and now increasingly the Red Sea, not to mention, of course, the peninsula. As for the hinterland of the Middle East and the oil-producing countries, it is a disgrace that we cannot, at least in humanitarian terms, mention the word Yemen. And the fact that the United States has now chosen in its recent decision to stop all international humanitarian assistance, if this is the writing on the wall for the hinterland states to oil, then hinterland instability is being stoked as we speak. So are we looking for a vision of equity, or are we looking solely for projects? Ladies and gentlemen, already the region faces enormous stresses due to the lack of water resources. And water stress will continue to affect the Middle East and North Africa more than any other region. The World Resources Institute rates 17 countries as facing extreme water stress. Of them, 12 are in the Middle East and North Africa. May I point out to you also that of the refugees and migrants in the world, 80% are Muslims. We have the Muslim institutional structure if we were to activate it, and that is universal zakat. And we are only asking for 2.5% of the wealth of Muslim countries, and those specialized in this field are massively talking about it. We have also made, in 2004, when I worked alongside Senator Biden and Senator Lugar in the US Senate, we presented a report on the new Middle East initiative to create a new Middle East trust, a trust which is clearly defined to be focused on particularly this cluster of water, energy, and the human environment, if I may put it that way, agriculture and food. It is time that we humanized our statistics, that we identified who it is we are trying to serve in this exercise. Several of these 17 countries, most notably Israel, desalinate water to meet their needs. This requires intensive energy and financial commitments not available to many countries in the region. But of course, those of you who have read the famous title, Israel and the Money Tree, are aware that Israel can choose to be a part of whichever region it selects at any given time, which is a tactical proposition. We would like to have a definitive answer as to whether Israel is going to be part of the region, and whether this concept of intra-independence in terms of water, energy, the human environment can evolve, whereby the marginalized and the vulnerable can be attended to. We have to move from a status-based approach to refugees to a vulnerability-based approach that identifies clearly what these vulnerabilities are. While several countries, most notably Israel, desalinate water to meet their needs, this requires intensive energy and financial commitments not available to many countries in the region. I remember President Turgut Özal, Allah yarhamu, telling me with his hand on the map of the Middle East, it's not true that we are not, I'm paraphrasing, interested in serving the region, but we would like to know exactly what the requirements are in municipal and industrial, and look how large our cities have become, our urban sprawl has become, and what are the requirements in agriculture, and indeed what are the requirements in terms of this transit area between the east, going all the way to China today, and the west, Shanghai to Southampton. We have two options, it seems to me. Either there is going to be a stabilizing of this region and it becomes truly this thoroughfare, or of course this nuclear option, which is no option, will get out of hand. One of the first things we did, and I'm a member still of the Emeritus Board of the Nuclear Threat Initiative, was to appeal to the incoming administration to take into consideration the fact that we have three maverick states in this country, in this region. One is Israel, one is Pakistan, and one is India. none of them signatories to regional threat commitments, threat containment commitments when it comes to CTBT. But I want to get back to the main issue and say everything is connected to everything else. I want to say that in 2015, the World Resources Institute ranked countries by the water stress they are projected to face in 2040, and 16 of the top 25 are in the region. We are working from the bottom up, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a dalliance with projects. This is not a dalliance with ideas. This is a region where essential rivers will face heightened stress from declining rainfall rates with increasing water withdrawal driven by population growth. And near their mouths, rising sea levels threatening saltwater inundation. We're talking about the Dead Sea, for example. The Dead Sea is an international body of water, in my humble opinion. Yes, it is a sea to be negotiated over by riparians, but at the same time, what is the value of talking about one canal that will push brine into the Dead Sea and another canal that will bring water from the higher levels of the Mediterranean to the Dead Sea and possibly create power, if the objective is not to create equities between the populations of the Rift Valley? A 2014 report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change notes that the reduction in rainfall over North Africa is very likely by the end of the 21st century. Modeling conducted by the Regional Initiative for the Assessment of Climate Change Impacts on Water Resources and Socio-Economic Vulnerability in the Arab region show that water flow will decrease by more than 50% in the Euphrates River and by 25% in the Tigris River by 2050. The need for a knowledge base, ladies and gentlemen, the need for crisis prediction, not crisis management, risk reduction, and understanding by politicians that we don't come to each other when there's a crisis and say, please sign a governmental order for a little bit more water. We're having such a terrible year. We should understand the incoming stresses and strains and act preemptively. Rising sea levels pose a distinct and potentially catastrophic phenomenon. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change projects that sea levels in the Mediterranean will rise by 0.3 to 1 meter this century. I had the opportunity of saying to the Egyptian government since the days of President Mubarak, why don't you build your defenses on the Mediterranean, on the Delta, to prevent the flooding of the Delta? If you wanted my opinion, I would go to the Dutch many yesterdays ago and say, how did you do it? How did you rescue so much land from the sea? Such sea level rise in the Gulf and Mediterranean will create severe problems for many countries along these bodies of water, especially those with heavily populated, low-lying coastal regions. Egypt, with its low-lying Nile Delta, close to 25% of its population of 100 million lives lives in the low-lying coastal zone, while 30 to 40% of its agricultural production is located in the Delta. I want to say that in terms of the attempts to develop a conversazione, which I believe is what we are trying to do here, that we would we should be inspired by the fact that we have the potential to be a crisis prevention center in terms of policies that should be adopted. The effects of change will not be limited to human suffering or economic damage alone. Security risks will necessarily follow. Looking forward, climate-accelerated migration will continue to challenge Middle Eastern governments' abilities to maintain stability. As our citizens move internally, I mentioned the threat of IDPs not being recognized for their true worth, while also drawing high European interest as many leave the region. The Europeans are doing reasonably well because of their algorithmic approach to weighting the true worth of incoming workforce and consequently accommodating and coping. My question to all of you is, how can we advise each other in terms of dealing with our people abroad? How can they be a benefit to our decision-making process? How can they be a lobby to focus on the importance of strategies, including water strategies? Today we hear that the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam being built on the Blue Nile with its effects on downstream in Egypt. Tomorrow we ask ourselves how long it will be for Israel desalination technologies, which have alleviated its water scarcity problem, but still has control of water resources, remains a potential and will remain a flashpoint between both Jordan and the Palestinians. In Gaza, I want to say that in particular, rising levels of pollution and salinity makes much of the groundwater undrinkable. So greatly exacerbating the humanitarian crisis there and again rising tensions with Israel, as the authors of many reports have put it very clearly, including a report entitled Israel in the Middle East, the Next 2 Decades. They, with the Brookings Institute, are thinking of what the challenges are over the next decades. We are just beginning a conversation at a very late stage in the day when we need a handful of dedicated, knowledgeable, preferably young minds. I'm not talking about ages, but I'm talking about the minds that can study the issue of regional water supply in a region which imports every single drop of drinking water from beyond the region. Climate change is not merely a future prospect in the region. While it is outside the scope of our work, possibly, it may not be a primary cause of specific upheavals. Climate effects will necessarily further burden overstretched institutions and government resources. So I would like to suggest that everything starts with a balance, with the mizan. We do not have the basic knowledge of the issues yet. We are trying to build it, and I hope that in building it, we can develop a technosphere in the service of the sociosphere and the ecosphere. Let me remind you that the sociosphere equates in my mind with sociology, but also with sociocide. The ecological sphere with ecology, but ecocide. Many of our ministers of environment do not know the difference between ecology and environment. And lastly, but not least, I would like to remind you of the all-important cogitosphere, wisdom, cogens. Let us not commit collective cogitocide because we have ceased to think and to analyze correctly. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'd be happy to make any further contribution that you wish. Thank you all very much. I wish you a successful meeting.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. It was a very mind-opening speech for all of us, and we hope that the science community and universities will grab this opportunity and work on these ideas. Especially, I would say that the science is doing what is supposed to do in terms of, because there is no demand from the welcoming industries. Our main speaker for the day is Mr. Suha Omar, a former ambassador of Turkey to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and who has been decorated with the Medal of Independence, First Order, by the late King Hussein of Jordan for his services, apparently, in creating good relationships between Jordan and Turkey. Mr. Omar has also 3 published books. One of them is about Jordan, and he has been working with many international and national communities in terms of diplomacy, improving work relationships of the diplomats and diplomacy institutions. Mr. Omar will be addressing his speech for the day as transboundary water resources in international diplomacy. We all welcome Mr. Omar to present his speech.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be able to address this important gathering with all people more or less I know for some time now. And of course, it is also a very challenging one, especially when the keynote speaker is the Royal Highness King Hassan, Prince Hassan of Jordan. His address reminded me of our very friendly chats in his study in Jordan, in Amman, over a cup of coffee, while the fireplace was spreading more warmth to the atmosphere. And to tell the truth, some of those very friendly chats were directly related to water issues. Prince Hassan was very active. That was more or less 23, 24 years ago, in all subjects, including water issues. And I see that he has lost no interest and no energy. He is still the same Prince Hassan, following all the developments all around the world in all subjects. I always wondered how he was able and how he is still able to do such a demanding thing. And to tell the truth, it had in the past, and it is still, I understand, a very difficult job to match him, both in his eloquence and his knowledge in any subject he is dealing with. My motto is, if you want to survive and keep on going, you should avoid challenging people like Prince Hassan. You should just listen to him and try to understand what he's talking about. Today, he once again made it very clear where we were standing as not Turkey, Turks, Jordan, Jordanians, and others, but as the world as a whole. The climate change challenges are before us. We should all be aware of it, and it is a very, very important challenge. I was involved, and I'm still involved in environmental matters, in conservation, and he referred to our hunting side or hunter side. This is true, but I left hunting many, many years ago in order to spare more time to conservation. As we know where we are, I hope we know where we are, we should try to find out how we could best get out of this not very clear and bright future. Prince Hassan referred to 3 regions. I understand that he enlarged the region where the water is a problem. He has very much reason in doing so, because the issue is becoming more and more, first of all, acute, and more encompassing many countries in comparison with to the, let's say, 15 or 20 years ago. He referred to a few concepts which, in my opinion, are very important. I will just repeat them in short, because these concepts, in my opinion, will lead us to where and how diplomacy should take us, why it should take us that way. One is water management. He referred to water management. This is an extremely important concept. The second is, in order to be able to manage something, you have to have knowledge, of course. So he referred to develop a knowledge-based approach, which is again very important. If you develop an approach which is not based on knowledge, you should be sure of that you will not lead to anything positive. Another concept he referred to is regional development concept, which is based on 3 very important equities: water, air, and soil. He made a little bit of change, I understand, in his way of thinking, because in the past, that was 20 years ago, he was referring to, when he was talking about water and water management, he was referring to water, energy, and environment. In fact, what he said today was a developed way of this thinking, which is very correct. By the way, he referred to this book sent to him by Minister Çavuşoğlu, Hijaz Railway. That reference took me to my days in Amman, when the Jordanian authorities were very kind to take out the locomotive that was used in those times, it was 90s, and we made a journey on the Hijaz Railway, part of it, which is still in Jordan, and that was a very good experience for me. Another concept he referred to today is interdependence. Not interdependence, but interdependence and independence also. In connection with that, he referred to Israel, and this is something new for me from Prince Hassan. And his reference to the attitude of Israel is a very correct one again. Israel should decide, at least when it comes to some issues like water, where is a state of Israel belongs to, and then try to cooperate with the other interested parties in order to be able to manage the situation. He referred to Yemen and the attitude of USA. This is a deplorable situation, but this is most. I understand that I will not make a short story long. To the contrary, a very long story short. The main approach, as far as I understood from his intervention or his speech, is his advising everybody to see or to look into the future and try to be prepared for crises, which are coming. We all see that. We should be seeing. And instead of reacting when there is a crisis, we should be able to recognize and be prepared, and if possible, preempt the crisis. In this case, water is very, very crucial. From here, I would like to come to my main subject. When and how diplomacy could and should be helpful in taking all these countries, all of us, and leading us into the future by knowing beforehand what are the challenges and how we are going to face them. Here, a couple of points are important in my opinion. One is the water is a very, as Professor Baran put it very ably, is one of the main crucial elements of the survival of the mankind, not only mankind and all the living creatures. We should not forget that life started in water. And if we keep on going like that, I'm afraid life might end in water too. And this end may come first for the mankind, because the mankind is the weakest creature on earth. All the other creatures are more able to adapt the changing situations and survive. So here we have to take into consideration that water, such an important element and such a scarce, and it's getting more and more scarce resource, we should not take water as a bone of content among the states. To the contrary, we should try to cooperate. The crux of the matter, or the key word in this issue, in my opinion, is cooperation. And when it comes to water, and when it comes to the Middle East, I'm talking about a limited Middle East, including to some extent Turkey, because of the Euphrates and Tigris waters and others. Here, if you want to get out of this situation, then the diplomacy should show us the way how best we could and should cooperate. For what? To make best use of available water, first of all. Secondly, this cooperation, based on knowledge, as Prince Hassan made it very clear, and shared knowledge, this cooperation should show us how we could make the water generating and water conserving capacities of the regional states much better than it is today. Then the crux of the matter, of course, this is the preparation. The crux of the matter is how we could and should make best use of the available water, created, preserved water, in equitable, optional, and reasonable way. This could only be achieved by way of diplomacy. We should keep in mind that in the past, I remember, and Prince Hassan referred to Turgut Özal, Prince Hassan also put before us a couple of ideas. I remember one in 19 1996, another one in 1996 and 1997, how best we could cooperate and what kind of bodies we could create in order to make this cooperation fruitful for all the countries in the earth. We should, in order to achieve, this is a very demanding objective, of course, to make best use of water in an equitable, optimal, and reasonable manner. We should keep in mind that, first of all, we should try to increase the water generating and storing capacities. Secondly, we should try to make the optional use of water, available water, possible. To this end, there are also some clues or some very important points. One is we should choose the best crop for each and every country, and even for each and every region, in order not to waste water. In my country, in Turkey, for example, in the past, we were able to waste a lot of water to raise crops which we did not, first of all, need, at least did not need that much. Second, not very important, not very valuable crops. Secondly, we should try to save as much water as possible. This is also very crucial. Water is scarce and it's getting more scarce every day. So we should be able to save water, not to waste water. When we come to this point, there were in the past, and there are still today, countries, for example, in the Middle East, who are not very able to save water or to make to use water in a reasonable way. So if there is not enough water, this waste becomes more and more crucial and important. Diplomacy should also help us in this sense. By diplomacy, we should be able to talk to each other and try to convince and make everybody understand how best we could save water, at least not to waste water. I remember, for example, Prince Hassan putting forward the idea of such a cooperation based on the example of Danube River. I don't really remember exactly how it was called, Danube River unit or something like that.
Commission.
Commission, that's exactly, Your Highness. Thank you very much. And this was a good idea. There were points which we were not very much in the same line with Prince Hassan. And I remember that we had discussed all these issues that time. But the idea itself was a correct one. Second, the idea put forward.
Mr. Kovac can tell you about it. He just joined us from Hungary.
Yes. Peter
Kovac can tell you about it.
You see, I remember every bit of what we talk about, Your Royal Highness. And yes, Turgut Özal put forward another project or idea, which Royal Highness referred to a couple of minutes ago, that getting together and trying to find out how we could benefit from what we have as water resources. And this Manavgat water project was one of the issues he raised, taking water from Manavgat River to bringing it to to Cyprus, and then to Israel, through Israel to Jordan. And then also another Turkish proposal. I'm not saying all these to promote Turkey, because I know that we made very crucial mistakes in the past, and I was very much in these things and challenging even the then President Demirel, who had appointed me as ambassador to Jordan, but we were still fighting over other issues like dams, and then the elimination of some waters and wasting waters and this. But the issue of tripartite commission we suggested to Iraq and Syria, how best we could get together and try to exchange whatever knowledge we had about the rivers and the use of water, and then try to find the best way to use or to benefit from the waters originating in Turkey and flowing into Iraq. And these were some diplomatic initiatives. I believe it is time for us, as Prince Hassan put it very ably, it is time for us, and even maybe it is too late. I hope it's not too late, but it is late. But there is still time. It is time for us to take into consideration that we are facing with a very important, crucial lack of very important element. And to be able to take the necessary steps on time and to avoid crises which are coming, we should choose the way of diplomacy and get together, put whatever knowledge we have in our files on the table, and try to come out of this with a reasonable, workable, and beneficial plan to make, as Prince Hassan put it this way, I remember, to make the standard of living of our pupils much better than today, with maybe with even less resources, but much better than today. This is the only way we could get out of this situation. In this connection, I would like to refer to another point, which in my opinion, is important. We should, what I'm going to say is very much, I understand, in line with the way of thinking of Prince Hassan. We should try to understand that in this region, we are the countries who should be making the decisions, who should decide what is in our benefit. We should not let other countries with much different objectives and interests to intervene more than necessary to lead us in a direction which is not always in our best interest. In my opinion, this is important because we have experienced, and we are still experiencing, this kind of intervention in the field of, for example, energy and oil and gas, this we should try to put an end. In order to be able to put an end to such a, if I may put it that way, not so positive intervention, we should first of all recognize that we are the owners of this region. And we are going to be the owners of this region. And we are doomed, if I may put it that way, live in this region as long as possible, not the others who are out of the region. I don't want to take much time of this meeting, and I would like to, first of all, again, thank for the invitation, and I'm very much delighted to be able to see Prince Hassan thank to this opportunity, and the others also. And if there are any questions which are related to this not so important and humble intervention of mine, of course I will try to do my best to answer them. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Excellency. I think some of the issues are starting to materialize here, and those are that diplomacy as a practice and as a science is very important in the inter-country relationships, and water should be among the highest priorities in this diplomacy. I think we also should add a call to the scientific community in these countries in the Middle East and elsewhere to do research on how to make this diplomacy interactive in the means of having the sufficient tools that give them the picture day by day of what is going on in terms of energy production, in terms of water quantities, in terms of polluting the water bodies. You know, in Europe now, in the Danube and in the Rhine, no pollutant is allowed into the rivers. It has to be purified, because the water has to be purified before it goes into the rivers. And it's a call. Now, may I also invite His Excellency Yaşar Yakış, the former Foreign Minister of Turkey, if he has something to add on these topics.
Thank you very much for giving me this floor, because I am one of the humble members of the Wise Men Committee chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Hassan, and yes, which is trying to develop ideas about the better use of water in the Middle East. Of course, when we say wise man, His Royal Highness is a wise man, and we are all his disciples. What we are doing now regarding the Middle East, there is a framework which is agreed by the by the United Nations. There's a convention with a very long name, which is called Convention on the Non-Navigational Uses of the International Water Courses. This, Turkey is not part of it. It is not signatory. But of course, whether Turkey is part of it or not, Turkey will have to abide by the rules which is contained in it. In the long run, the rules to manage the water will develop in the direction within the framework which is shown in that international convention. This is one thing. Secondly, Middle East being one of the poorest region of the world in water resources, we have to show solidarity, and as His Royal Highness mentioned, perhaps in connectivity within ourselves, keeping our autonomy, but still remaining in touch and perhaps exchanging views, exchanging experiences, etc. This is important. Now that we are crossing a crisis period diplomatically in the Middle East, many things happen after the big crises. So one may expect that the present crisis in the Middle East may also open the way to a closer cooperation. This was one of the ideas that His Royal Highness also supported. When the European Union was created, it was created because of cooperation in the iron and the coal. Because iron and coal and iron were the most important dividing element or mine in between France and Germany. And a cooperation that started in that particular area evolved into what we have seen now, the European Union. So since water is the scarce, the most important thing in the Middle East, we may also hope that we may start an organization, a cooperation mechanism in the Middle East, which starts with water resources. This is our hope, but of course, it will take time for countries to come together. Now that the Americans are trying to create a Kurdish area within Syria and also in the north of Iraq, the waters of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers will have 4 shareholders instead of 3.
Yes.
That's to say, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq were the countries that were sharing the water of these 2 big rivers. Now, the Kurds perhaps will if the Americans pursue their intention or their plan to carve out a Kurdistan region in the north of Iraq and also in the north of Syria, then the number of the countries that will have to share the water of Euphrates and Tigris will be 4 instead of 3. These are problems that we have to face. Of course, there are a lot of other things that can be said on this issue, but I want to add to the valuable contribution that are made here and my humble idea on this subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. You reminded me of something that Jordan is also one of the countries neighboring the watershed of the Euphrates River. It has 30 kilometers of the watershed in length and boundaries. And not really the water itself, but the watershed. Now we have about 42 or 43 minutes to go. And I would like to ask the audience, the participants, whoever has something to add, something to say, something to ask, something he or she would think that is important to mention. Yes, Your Royal Highness.
I'm sorry, just a point of diplomacy and order. I want to recognize the arrival of former President of Slovenia, Danilo Turk, who presided us in the Global High-Level Panel for Water, and the call for action report is largely to his inspired leadership. Yes, I also want to take the opportunity, if I may, to thank, I don't know if she is with us, Carmen Marquez Ruiz. If she is not, I would understand, but I do think that working with the European Union on the level of the External Action Service And in addition to that, of course, bringing into play the fascinating reports that have been presented, among others, by you, Mr. Moderator, to the Water Management and Diplomacy document, Volume 1, which you have provided, is first class. However, I just want to bring your kind attention to the fact that you have mentioned risk a number of times, and I just want to say, is this distinguished panel a member of the Prevention Web, the knowledge platform for disaster risk reduction? And are we aware of the differences of disaster risk reduction, DRR, and disaster risk management, DRM? I'm always a little bit wary about managing disasters for obvious reasons, but I would like to suggest that avoiding the construction of new risks, addressing pre-existing risks, sharing and spreading risk to prevent disaster loss being absorbed by other development outcomes and creating additional poverty. Surely this is the work of prevention. So please let us consider for the regional knowledge base participatory mapping, societal, geographic, geological, layer upon layer of increased knowledge of the situation on the ground. That's what I wanted to intervene. And I don't know if Sandeep Aslekar of Blue Peace has arrived, that he would be an additional contributor, I'm sure. So thank you, Dr. Jellokar.
You're welcome, sir. I repeat my call. If any of the participants has something to add,
yes, please,
to contribute, please go ahead, raise your hand, and you will be given the mic.
Yes, please.
Who's you?
Yeah, I am Hassan Janabi. I was the former Minister of Water Resources in Iraq.
Okay.
And I am also the ambassador to Turkey right now, and I just been sent to retirement 2 weeks ago. So I still have fresh experience. Shukran, thank you. I'm very happy to hear yet again His Royal Highness Prince Hassan opinion on these major issues that concerns him and us, and I've been following, of course, His Royal Highness activities and opinions on that. I also enjoyed listening to the former speakers. From my experience as a water expert and also Minister of Water Resources in Iraq, I think I can say now that the bilateral relations water-wise currently is far more better than many years ago. I think we have been able to maintain a very high level discussions. When I was a minister for 2 years in the last cabinet of Dr. Haider Abadi, I visited Turkey 5 to 6 times. I had very fruitful and frank discussions with my Turkish counterpart. I think we have developed reasonably well and good understanding of issues. I raised the, of course, Iraq concerns very frankly with my colleagues here in Turkey, and I think we have approached really, you know, a level of cooperation and understanding that unprecedented before. This was this has resulted also in President Erdogan's appointment of his special representative on water to Iraq, Professor Faisal Oruglo, who was the Minister of Forestry and Water Issues for 11 years. I also met with Professor Oruglo many times after his appointment. He also visited Iraq and developed a draft plan for the Iraqi authorities to discuss. We also have received inputs from the Iraqi side on the Turkish plan, and there will be soon, like within the next probably couple of weeks, there will be also a meeting, high-level meeting between the two teams, trying to coordinate water cooperation. One thing in this water relations with Turkey is very important, and I think we need to work hard and work more with our Turkish counterparts to understand that Iraq-Turkish water relation is not purely technical cooperation. Because technical cooperation, we can cooperate with any other country in our region or outside our region. So we can get training, we can get capacity development, we can do projects, etc. But when it comes to Iraq and Turkey, there are other dimensions that need to be addressed. This social, cultural, all these issues that need to be addressed to be properly resolved between the two countries. See, for example, the Euphrates has already like 7 major dams upstream of Iraq, has been constructed in the last 40 years. Similarly, what is going on the Tigris is very similar. Like recently, last year, Eliso Dam was completed and filled. This is in Turkey. So all these infrastructures, of course, changed the flow regime in the river basin. And changing the flow regime in the river basin, this has direct impact on lives and further downstream, whether it is economic, social, cultural, everything. Also, the hydrology of these two rivers, snow melt hydrology. That's when there's, it means that flood takes place in springs when the snow melts and the water starts flowing. So when you construct major dams, so all these peaks, all these water is kept behind the dam walls. So this will impact the biodiversity, the economic lives further downstream. So we need to replicate, for example, the natural processes. So all these need, of course, discussion, need very serious engagement between the countries relevant to this, of course, including Syria in this case, when it comes to the Euphrates at least. So these are, and our water, like in Iraq, for example, we have 2 major seasons for crop production, for irrigation, summer season and winter season. So 3 months in winter and 3 months in summer, we have to have water. Otherwise, if water comes outside these 2 time frames, then it will be less beneficial to our country. So synchronizations of the operations of these major infrastructures is very important in this. This, of course, needs a higher level of understanding between the people responsible in dealing with this. We need a little bit of more work on that, but I'm happy to report that during my time as a Minister of Water Resources and as Iraq ambassador to Turkey, we worked really hard on this, and I would like to thank my counterparts here in Turkey who helped us to bring the 2 nations or the 2 governments to a better understanding of each other's need. Dr. Yashar mentioned the UN Convention, the UN 1997 Convention. We in Iraq, of course, consider this as a cornerstone in our diplomatic efforts when it comes to managing shared water or transboundary water. This is important. We wish that Turkey also sign up for this and many other, of course, convention, whether the CBD, the desertification, the combating desertification, and what have you. I think we have a lot in common. I think we can achieve better, and cooperation and diplomacy is the way to go. Thank you very much.
May I just take the opportunity of asking one question of the speaker, my namesake, Ambassador Hassan Janabi, and indeed of the other participants. We spoke about the great Euphrates River, but I was represented by Dr. Hakam Alami a couple of years ago at a meeting in Ladakh in India. I was invited by the British Geological Society. I couldn't go because Ladakh is too much altitude for me. And the question I wanted transmitted to them, because they were talking in terms of Pakistan and the punch up, the 5 rivers, the 5 great rivers, not one river, but 5 rivers. Are we in negotiation mode or are we in vision building mode? My understanding as a corrective maybe to our discussions is that we are in blue sky thinking. Otherwise, I could have told you how I met 6 Iraqi governors brought by the Iraqi ambassador to Jordan, who all asked me to intervene on behalf of Iraq in terms of the Ulusu water dam. I know nothing about Ulusu. I didn't want to learn anything about Ulusu. Certainly, I didn't want to intermediate. So I told them that there is clear evidence to suggest that low-income countries with weak governance are more vulnerable and less resilient to disaster risk. I know we like to push our statistics, all of us. I don't want to talk for others, but certainly here to say we are middle income. But when 1/5 of your population are refugees, then undoubtedly it has an immediate impact on poverty and hunger. So a vision that can link poverty, hunger, nutrition, water management, health is what we need to develop to avoid effectively the gradual corroding of our institutions, to strengthen institutional and legislative arrangements within a concept that has a clear objectives, which is the equity between the countries involved and the peoples involved. I mean, your idea of the different crops for different regions, my dear friend Suhabik, if I may call you that, is exactly what we need at this time. Thank you.
May I intervene at this point?
Please.
Yes, I would like to take up where Professor Hassan left. I'm afraid we had always been, and we are still in negotiating mode without having a vision. And if we don't have a vision and a clear-cut vision and a correct vision, negotiating will bring nothing, will take us to nowhere. Because without a vision, a true vision, vision based on knowledge and shared knowledge, then we will most probably end up with something that we would not like to end up. Ambassador of Iraq to Turkey referred to dams on Euphrates and Tigris, and of course dams have pros and cons against them, not only for the downstream countries, but also for the countries where these dams are built in. So when we are negotiating, or when we are talking about water and the dams, first I will come back to this idea of vision building. We should have a vision. What we have, what we want to do with this, whatever we have, and how we could and should do or should reach this objective. This is where diplomacy is important, in my opinion. This is when diplomacy enters into the scene and makes all of us reach the objective, the true objective, the right objective we have in mind. But again, first of all, we have to try to build a vision based on knowledge, and then try to negotiate this vision. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mr. Yashar Yakush raised his hand. Please. Do you want to say something, sir?
Yeah. Shall I be authorized to
yes.
make a short intervention in addition to what His Excellency Ambassador Hassan of Iraq raised a very valuable and important question. And I also followed the discussions that he had with the Turkish authorities on especially on the Tigris River. But regarding the Tigris River, I want to combine with what Ambassador Suha Umar said. Vision is important, but of course we are limited by what Allah gives us as water. We cannot increase it, so we have to utilize whatever is available. Unlike in Euphrates, for Tigris, we are in closer terms with Iraq because the basin of the Tigris River does not allow Turkey to use water for irrigation purposes. Mainly, it is for generation of power. So, if it is for generation, you have to release water in order to generate power. You cannot keep the water. If you keep the water, then you cannot generate power. So, this river, the water of the river Tigris is mainly for generation of power. Of course, it will, because of evaporation and for other reasons, the share of Iraq may be reduced. But of course, Iraq will also receive more regular water. That's to say, since they agreed with the Turkish authorities now to release water at the periods when Iraq needs it, rather than doing it at the will of Turkey alone. This is an important aspect that has to be kept in mind. There was another subject that was mentioned during one of the several meetings where we participated together with His Royal Highness Prince Hassan. It was the search of the possibilities to use the Tigris River Basin in order to store water for Iraq. That's to say, to construct a dam in Turkey. This water, of course, you have to inundate submerge the area which will be covered with water. So the two countries may agree in order to keep the water in the Turkish side, because evaporation will be less in the Turkish side. And so far, we have also seen that there were difficulties in Iraq for the escape of water in one of the dams there. So the cooperation, the sky is limit for the cooperation. There are many opportunities. When we have bright ambassadors of Iraq, like His Excellency Mr. Janabi, we will. I'm sure that we will. The two countries will agree on maximum and not maximum or optimum utilization of water. I'm very grateful to Mr. Janabi for having raised this question so that I could also put my modest contribution to it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Any other contributions from the audience? We have about 30 minutes to go. No, I think 23 minutes to go.
Yeah, Danilo Turk, I would like to say a few words.
Please.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Danilo Turk. I was president of Slovenia some years before. I'm grateful to His Royal Highness Prince Hassan for having introduced me already in my other capacity, which was chairman of the Global High-Level Panel on Water and Peace. And at present, I was very privileged to have received the invitation for this important meeting. In my current capacity, I work with Geneva Water Hub, an organization that looks at water questions globally and tries to promote the concept of water as an instrument of strengthening peaceful cooperation. Now, the organization that I am advising currently is coming from the understanding that this peaceful water cooperation requires constant nurturing, and that there is a need for more and more cooperation in that regard, and that should transcend the regional and bilateral boundaries. We have established a system which is called a Global Observatory for Water and Peace, and actually in 2019, during the Arab Water Week, we have established a unit for the Middle East with the assistance of His Royal Highness Prince Hassan. This is just to introduce my background a little bit and explain why I'm participating. I'm very privileged to have participated and listening to the discussion so far. And what I would like to mention really are 2 points, essentially. We have heard about the importance of water diplomacy and vision in water diplomacy. And this is really gaining a lot of traction internationally nowadays. The European Union is putting water diplomacy more and more towards the center of its international cooperation. And I think that in the Middle East, it would be very important to find a good connection with that sincere European effort, which can perhaps help in various ways, diplomatic, financial, and otherwise. The United Nations has declared the decade of water action, which will have its midterm review in 2023. And that also is a sign of growing importance and growing awareness of water cooperation, which obviously is something that has existed for a long time, but is gaining additional sense of urgency today. This sense of urgency could be detected with respect to different aspects of water cooperation. One of them is humanitarian, waterborne diseases, in particular in areas where peace is not yet fully secured or where peace is fragile, precarious. So I think that that's an important consideration which has to be given a sense of urgency. And the other thing is creation of regional mechanisms, regional cooperation schemes for strengthening cooperation. Now, with the global warming and all the phenomena which are expressed through water at the time of global warming, we can expect only more water scarcity and more serious need for very reasonable, rational use of water resources. I was very glad to hear in the discussion the emphasis on the UN Convention on Non-Navigational Use of International Watercourses. Now, that convention obviously contains fairly abstract norms, but those abstract norms are gaining urgency everywhere. And obviously the question for us coming from outside the region of Middle East is, why is Middle East lagging behind? We are learning from literature that back in 1950s, there was a very ambitious plan designed by an American engineer, Eric Johnston, and that was one of the more visionary approaches that were tried in the past. We would probably need, looking from a global perspective, something similar now, a more regional approach to the questions of transboundary water cooperation. I was very glad to have listened again to very pointed remarks by His Royal Highness Prince Hassan. Why is the vision still relatively weak? And why is this happening at the time when the awareness of urgency of water cooperation is growing? Let me be very clear. I'm not speaking about the dynamic of bilateral water cooperation, each of which has its own history, its own ups and downs, its own promises. I think what is needed is to add that vision of intensified cooperation now and a vision of regionalization of cooperation. These are the 2 points. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to be pretentious. What I'm trying to do is simply to say how are things seen from the perspective of different international organizations, which are much more involved in water issues than was the case 5 or 10 years ago. These issues are becoming really so important and so visible that the United Nations, the European Union, everybody else will be seeing, well, what can we do? What should we do? Well, you know, that largely depends on what kind of vision is offered and what kind of needs are established as a result of that vision. Now, this is my contribution. And of course, in Geneva Water Hub and in the Global Observatory will be prepared for any conversation in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Danilo Türk. A special guest for me also, because I was in your beautiful country in 1983, and contributing to a seminar with the University of Ohio about the urbanization issues in Slovenia and in general. Do we have other participants who would like to add something, ask something? We still have 15 minutes to go from the original time, but I'm free to add some minutes also.
Dr. Fadi Kumer, I think I see he's raising his hand.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing him. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I rose my hand. Thank you so much, Dr. Hassan Janabi. I'm very pleased to see you today and to see His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan bin Talal, that I had the honor to meet him in Lebanon maybe 15 years ago in a special occasion in Lebanon, and I was charged by the Lebanese president to accompany His Royal Highness in Lebanon. And I'm very pleased also to be invited to this high-level panel by Professor Baba and by my colleague Dursin Yildiz. And we are all really a team of hydro diplomats, and we organize each year in the French Senate an initiative on hydro diplomacy and climate change, starting the COP21 with Senator Olivier Cadic. And we had the honor to welcome a big part of the prominent experts that are present here. First of all, I would like to thank His Royal Highness for highlighting very important issues concerning water diplomacy based on social component and the human component, and also what Dr. Hassan Janabi expressed on the technical component that is very important in order to ensure equitable sharing and reasonable use of water for riparian countries. Let me highlight what we are doing actually at UNESCO as a chair of the IHP Council. We are working on the strategy of the next decade, which is based on 3 major pillars for 2021 and 2029 period. The first pillar is how we can use technological tool in order to assess new programs between riparian countries so that this consolidated database could be targeting directly the pressure that we are accompanied on from climate change. So technological tool as first pillar of this strategy is a major asset in order to share water between riparian countries. The second major pillar of our new strategy of IHP is the governance on basin management, how we need to establish ties between riparian countries in order to start with a new approach of governance based on the nexus of water, energy, and food, on the basin level. And third is how we want to stress on water education and disseminate the water culture between riparian countries. So those are the three major pillars that are a must to be linked to hydrodiplomacy in order to achieve peace between riparian countries. Because I guess as scientists and diplomats, what we need to achieve is how to secure the future generation, especially that the pressure coming from climate change, coming from mass population transfer, and this is a very important point that His Royal Highness has raised, is really a major issue that we will be facing for the next decade. So I would like to put into your hand the draft of the 9th strategy of UNESCO, and I will welcome all the comment of the prominent experts that are in the panel today, especially the comments of His Royal Highness and Dr. Hassan Janabi, so that we can provide through the UNESCO IHP Council a very important document in order to be used and to relieve the pressures from the water and climate change impacts. So maybe if I could share this strategy with you by your contacts, by your mails, so that we can have the discussion of this new document in March, a complete document taking into consideration the valuable comments that you have put all in the floor, bearing in mind that it is an asset for us to work on both conventions, the 1992 UNICE Convention and the 1997 Convention, in order to establish a proper peace process based on water between riparian countries. Thank you.
Thank you. We have also Mr. Peter Kovacs from Hungary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is really my pleasure to be invited for this really interesting meeting. I want to greet all the excellencies who are present. I think it's very important that even high-level people are listening to those webinars. My last visit in Turkey was in Izmir, so I have a very good memories of the cities. And also my last visit in the Middle East was in Lebanon, just before the lockdown due to the COVID situation. I think the Danube was mentioned several times during this really interesting debate. And I also think that the Danube cooperation can be a very good exemplar, how the countries can work on. It was also mentioned that it is very important to have a joint or a common vision, what we want to do with our water resources. And luckily in the Danube region, we have such a vision. So we have, let's say, political commitment to implement the European Water Framework Directive, although almost half of the countries are not a member state. So they have no legal obligation to fulfill it. But during the years, we already organized 3 ministerial meetings on the ICPDR level. And also from the non-EU countries, we have a political commitment to fulfill these obligations, to fulfill the vision in the future. That is why we are proceeding very well, because we have a clear path, and we also could manage many things during the last decades. For example, pollution is decreased significantly, but we are still fighting with the pollution. Noise, micropollutants, the microplastic is a real challenge in the Danube Basin. And I think it could be also a big challenge in the Middle East region as well. I also agree that you have to solve your problem between yourself. So we can give you good advices, but we are not able to solve the problems. You have to conduct a lot of negotiation, bilateral or multilateral level. And even if a river basin commission is working very efficiently, like the ICPDR, you still can have problems, maybe on transboundary level. I think all of the lawyers know the case of the Gabčíkovo-Nagymaros hydropower case between Hungary and Slovakia. We are still in negotiation how we can recover, let's say, original state of the river, because now 80% is diverted to the other country. So we cannot use, let's say, the water. And that is why we are also very active. I mean, Hungary is very active. Our president was also part of the high-level panel, Mr. Ader. And we also a big promoter of the UN Convention and the conventions, I can say, because we are promoting both. And that is why we also volunteer to take, let's say, brave steps forward. We are leading two very sensitive, politically sensitive topics in the frame of the UNECE, the water allocation on transboundary waters, and also we would like to develop a kind of guidance which would help the countries to establish working relationship or working agreements on water management. I think these tools might be very useful also for you in the Middle East region. And I hope that it will be used all over the world, as the Water Convention became a global convention just recently. I think these debates are very important. And I also put more importance on the bilateral discussion. It's really good for us even that we have the ICPDR, but many of the problems are not solved by the ICPDR. They give it back to the countries. So the countries has to do a lot, and they have a certain obligation also. And in many cases, I think also the Danube cooperation could show a very good example how to start a peace building. You can remember the Balkan War. After the Balkan War, the first agreements and the first cooperation between the countries started on water management, because there is a need for do that. Flood is coming, drought is coming. We are facing with more and more challenges like climate change, which is also increasing those phenomena. So we have really aim for a more coordinated and harmonized actions on the basin level. Many countries cannot solve their problem themselves. They are rely on the others sharing the same watershed. So I really appreciate for the invitation, and I always happy to contribute on my capacity as well, and also on the capacity of the Water Convention. Or I also very proud that with most of the countries we have also bilateral cooperation agreement. So we are also offering our knowledge to solve such a problems in the Middle East as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
I just want to take the opportunity to make a Turkish announcement. Bir fincan kahvenin 40 yıl hatırları.
Good, Your Royal Highness, very good.
Thank you.
You are muted.
Mr. Moderator, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, I mute. It went out. This webinar started as an idea of what we can do between me and Mr. Dursun Yildiz at the HPA, the Hydropolitics Association in Ankara. And it ended up as a conference between prominent individuals who are masters in their science, in their trade of managing diplomacy in the water and whatever is related to them. So I'm very thankful to God, first of all, and we still have, oh no, we don't have, it went out. Can I conclude, or if you don't have anything else to add? We started on time.
I just wanted to thank the French speaker among us, Jean-Louis Olivier.
Please, he didn't raise his hand first.
He hasn't raised his hand, but I would like to say that in the last edition of Futurible, are you with me, Jean-Louis?
Jean-Louis, please.
In the last edition of Futurible, I noticed with great interest a new French acronym, new to me anyway, and that is in terms of water pollution. Apparently, you have managed to develop a new acronym, and I wish I could remember it now. I think it's POPOL. Are you aware of this new acronym and what it means? Is it being taken seriously in France? In terms of the politique de l'eau et la pollution?
Mr. Jean-Louis, can you open up your mic, please?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to participate in your video conference on behalf of the French Water Academy. I know many of the participants. In the past year I could meet in a lot of missions. As you know, we have great involvement in the river basin management through Agence de l'eau, river basin agency, that not only has planning of the water, but also get money from water users. Because one important aspect in water management is the money you need for infrastructure, building, and also to manage them and prevent any problem, and also for the management of the infrastructure on the long run. You know, that's a problem that has to be tackled, and the money management is closely related to the water management that must be taken into consideration, as well as all the social, human, and other parameters, which I did appreciate in your different communication this afternoon. We could improve the water pollution abatement in the River Seine and River Rhône, you know, over the last decades, you know, because of this tool of the river basin agencies and the river basin committee. And we have also involvement in the network of river basin agencies at global level and at regional level. And this is very helpful to have exchange of knowledge between institutions in different regions, in different countries, and different solutions we can share, you know, to nobody has 100% solution, and it depends on geographical condition, historical condition, and also economic, and everything must be taken into consideration. That's why I did appreciate also the importance of the vision, you know, not only the specialists, but the political and the vision, almost philosophical vision that we can share, you know, between each others, which is essential to solve the problem in the context very difficult of the climate change, sanitary problem, pollution problem, and so on, make it difficult for the coming decades, you know. And we have to think on the long run, you know. 10 years is almost nothing. You cannot implement any water works, you know, we should think over one century, you know. It's interesting when I travel in so many countries, if you look in Asia, in Japan or China, they planify one century, you know. What will happen in one century? It's not too early, you know. It takes 10 years to have the engineering side, to get the land, to get the money, to build the waterworks. So it needs 20 years, you know, to see improvement. And the result could not be in the short run, even not in the midterm, but in the very long term, you know. And this vision must be also long-term vision. And it's urgent between the early challenge and the long-term vision. Thank you very much. I did appreciate I could participate. I was extremely interested by the share of experience and proposals. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have already consumed our given time. Actually, one reason why I don't want to consume additional time is that we want to put this, sorry, Your Royal Highness.
I just want to thank Fadi for reminding me of that wonderful visit I made to Beirut. And I want to remind you again of the role of AUB University at the moment. They are doing fantastic work on in very difficult times, and we need a Levant corpus, which would include Turkey and Palestine and the Lebanese and the Jordanians and the Iraqis and the Syrians, if I may, to begin to talk as colleagues and make a peer group review of our comments, to make our voice heard to the world, rather than only inviting expertise with which we partner from outside. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Highness, and we were very pleased to host last year Her Highness Princess Sumaya at the Senate at the opening. And let me just announce that next year we'll be dealing with
us, but
with the Himalaya.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Fadi. Now, if we don't have anything to add, I would ask Mr. Alper Baba, Professor Alper Baba, to present concluding remarks of this webinar. And before that, I would also like to urge everybody who was present with us that they can share with us whatever material, whatever books, whatever reports are there, so we can read and benefit from. Like Mr. Fadi mentioned, the report, you can send it to the Secretariat of the University of Izmir, and they can share it with all of us. Mr. Alper Baba.
Is the mayor of Izmir with us? Is the mayor of Izmir with us? I saw the name.
He was supposed to be here, so Your Highness.
Please thank him for the hospitality of his beautiful city.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I will relay your message.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Mr. Alper Baba?
Yes, His Royal Highness Prince Al Hassan bin Talal, dear Presidents, dear Minister, dear Embassy, Excellency, distinguished participants, we had an excellent discussion on issue related managing transboundary water resources in complex world today. This high-level event offered an excellent opportunity to raise awareness about the importance of global warming, transboundary water, water diplomacy, water management, water policy, and other water-related and target and need for the immediate action. As you know, that managing and securing access to the water for all is one of the most challenging items on the world agenda. It is required us to rethink the governance structure of the water to deal with not only a national level, but also globally. We learned that situations are diverse depending on the local and the country setting, and yet we found some commonalities such as need for effective measures to address worsening situation due to among of the other things such as the climate change and urbanization. Let's work together with a common sense of urgent and action, energize, effective and innovative implementation programs at the national, regional, and global level of the water in the Izmir Institute of Technology. I thank you all for your participation, and then look forward to continuing our dialogues in the future. I hope that in near future you come in Izmir, we discuss this important problem face to face in our city. With all heart, we invited you Izmir in our institute. Thank you very much for coming our important event. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Baba. By this, we conclude our.
Am I allowed to say 2 words?
Please.
With your permission, Mr. Moderator, Izmir is my hometown.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Mr. Kovacs was very happy to be in Izmir, but I would like to thank specially to the Institute, to Professor Alper Baba and Esra Hanım and yourself for for organizing this meeting, which I'm doubly proud, as I said, being one from Izmir. So thank you very much for these last words. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, everybody, and see you in a forthcoming conference, inshallah.
Thank you.